Thanks for stopping by, guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today's episode is going to be a bit of a discussion, and I'm probably going to put some gameplay footage over this that has really no relation to the content itself. So today's episode, we're going to be talking about some of the improvements and fixes that really need to be made to Scrap Mechanic. Now, before I start, I do want to say a few things. One, this is mostly creative-based features. I rarely touch on anything survival, so I really don't know much about it. The other is a lot of these features or changes have quite a bit to do with what I'm used to doing, which is tanks. They're not all specifically about tanks, but keep that in mind. And if there are any other ideas that you would like to see added to Scrap Mechanic or Scrap Mechanic Creative specifically, please let me know in the comments down below. Now, I'm going to try and list these off with the most important fixes, and then towards the end kind of go into the things I would like to see in the future. So the first thing that really needs to be fixed is the teleportation bugs. If you're not aware of what this is, it means that the host in a multiplayer session is able to see all characters perfectly. All characters, all vehicles are where they should be. However, clients don't always see that. We're not sure what's causing it, if it's something connected to the internet connection or to their PC specs. But once you get out of a certain radius, oftentimes clients will just not see where people are. There's some weird anomalies where if someone is in a vehicle, this is more common. If they're out of a vehicle, usually it shows them in the correct place, and has been documented a number of times, including in battles or just normal gameplay, normal just hanging out in multiplayer. This is a common occurrence, and it is a major problem for anything that anyone wants to do multiplayer wise, especially in creative. I'm not aware if this is still an issue in survival, but it most definitely is in creative. Another issue that we keep having is deleting things from seats. For some reason, while you're in a seat, you can still hold right click and delete blocks. Not sure why this is. I don't think it was something you could do before. However, it's an issue. Oftentimes when doing a battle or just playing around, I'll accidentally hit right click and delete a few blocks, which isn't a major issue until I start deleting buttons, logic, and in some cases, I have actually deleted my seat. And since I save my creations often, this hasn't had any major catastrophic effects. However, for people who might not save as often as I do, with the 30 plus copies of a single tank, it may actually delete or destroy something that someone has spent hours of time on. And that could really kill someone's interest in a game when they've spent so much time on something so precious, and possibly lose it to a bug. And the next one we'll be talking about is another glitch. However, it is on the lighter side, and that is level 5 seats don't save their custom bearings when saved on a lift. And I think this has something to do with the fact that level 5 seats were once only available in survival, but now that they're available in creative, when you start saving them on a lifts, they don't save those values. They don't save those custom degrees. They don't save the speeds. And that is a feature that I think is very useful. And I've been trying to use it for some of my planes. However, since it doesn't save, every time I'd spawn in a vehicle, I would have to manually go in and fix it, which makes that feature almost completely useless for me. And the fourth suggestion I want to talk about is fixing the spudgun knockback levels. Previously, the knockback levels were what I would consider acceptable. That's how we managed to make our cannons. Basically, whenever a spud hits an object, it pushes it slightly or exerts a force on it. And that force has been about halved in a recent update. We think it's not intentional, and we'd love for the devs to fix it. However, if it is intentional, I simply want to tell the devs, it doesn't matter how nerfed you make the spud guns, we're still going to make cannons regardless. So could you please upgrade the cannons or the spud guns knockback to a point that it is helpful or realistic, so that we don't have to have 1,000 spud guns in our tanks to move a small canister at a decent velocity. We're aware that they don't really like us with the penetration things that we do, but we're going to do it regardless. So can you help us out a little bit on that one? And the fifth one we're going to be talking about is probably one you may or may not know about. With the new leveled pistons, the piston strengths are different. Now, on a basic level, this seems normal. A level 1 piston can't hold as much weight as a level 5 piston. And if you don't know, the level 2 piston has the same strength as the legacy pistons that we used to use. The problem then comes when you're doing some really cool and advanced stuff with pistons. In some situations, such as our cannons, or in other situations like suspensions and shock absorbers, you want to be able to customize that strength, especially when, like our cannons, we still need that speed. We need the speed of a level 5 piston, but the level 1's strength is much more efficient for cannons. So we're put in a predicament where we can't adjust that strength slider. It is fixed to the level of the piston. And in this case, to get the speed we need for our reloading systems, we need a level 5. But that also means we have to build bigger, beefier cannons because those level 5 pistons are much stronger and much more inefficient for what we're doing. Something similar could be done with suspension or shock absorbers. If you're customizing a vehicle and you want to change the strength of your shock absorber via piston, you would have to delete the piston and change it physically rather than changing a slider, which is what I would much rather prefer. Next is one of the big flashy things that I know a lot of people are wanting, and that is water in creative. Simply put, water's in survival, we want in creative so we can mess around with buoyancy, boats, things like that. And in my case, I am particularly interested in amphibious tanks or amphibious vehicles capable of fighting, similar to the real world BMP series. Now the next one I'll talk about is one that people have been asking for a while. However, it's later in this list because I don't think it is 100% necessary. And that is the ability to either turn off name tags or reduce the size of them. Because currently the name tags are always on regardless of how far away the person is. And, well, the only way to turn that off is by completely disabling the HUD, which in our case for tank battles is not really a good option. Now, while I would like to have a simple check mark to turn off HUDs, or turn off the name tags specifically, sorry, I misspoke there, I also would like to see some sort of slider for the size of those name tags. At certain distances, those name tags can get really large or appear very large, to the point the name tag can actually obscure the person and the vehicle itself, which in my case is a problem that I don't really like, and as I said, I would like to see fixed if the devs have time. Next is the addition of larger maps. I think this one's pretty self-explanatory, but in survival we have these large expansive open maps, and I'd like to see those brought over into creative because, well, people have been enjoying building planes and boats, and we don't have the size to really facilitate them. Now, we could add that to tanks and tank battles to make these massive battles, but honestly, for ground-based vehicles, the creative little square is suitable for most things. It's when you start getting into planes that room limit really runs into place. Or if you're talking about boats, having a large enough area of water to mess around in rather than a pond or a puddle would kind of be necessary. And the 10th item on our list is a bit more of a nitpick. And that's about the logic menu. The old logic menu, I loved it. They had large big buttons that were easy to click, especially when you're doing a lot of logic. It was really easy to snap in and out of those menus, clicking on what you needed. And for those who are new to the game, it had a little diagram or a little explanation talking about how that specific logic gate kind of interacted. It wasn't perfect, but it was a good teaching lesson for especially new players. I didn't really use it oftentimes, but hey, it was there and I liked it. Now it's a really tiny menu with itty bitty little buttons, and when you have to program 10 different logic blocks, and trying to hit those little buttons with your cursor is a bit of a pain. And oftentimes you miss, and you have to go into a logic block 2 or 3 times to get it to select the proper logic state, whether it be and, nor, or whatever. It's not necessary, but it's kind of annoying, and I would very much like it. And the only reason this isn't higher up on my list is because I don't really mess with logic enough right now to really annoy me as much as it probably would. And the last thing on the list is one of those dream things, something I wish the devs would add. And that would either be a small explosive, like a tiny 1-block explosive, or some sort of more powerful spud gun. And when I say more powerful spud gun, I am not meaning a cannon. I love the mechanical cannons that we use in game currently. However, I would love to see a simple, something like a spud gun or a mounted spud gun that can fire a high velocity round that can destroy more than just cardboard and glass. Maybe it can only destroy up to a certain level or a certain durability. That way it could be used to take out wheels or decorative components or other smallly unarmored vehicles, say wood and things like that, that would be used for the amphibious vehicles I was discussing earlier. That would be really nice. Or something that launches a small explosive that only does a little bit of damage to lower durability targets, or maybe even does the same damage, just a much smaller radius. And like I said before, small explosive canisters would be another option. However, for this kind of intermediate period, I would like to see something that's mounted simply for the sake of reliability, because our cannons, while they are useful, aren't always the most reliable when you start trying to mass shells, a lot of shells. Like you can see in the Marshall, which has 24 rounds, due to its large capacity, it's very complex and destroys the frame rate quite often. Now then, the last thing I'm going to mention, I actually forgot to mention. It was meant to be much earlier in this list. However, I'm just going to add it here for the sake of simplicity. And that is spuds giving a downwards force. For those who don't know, this was a kind of quick fix by the developers when they realized things like hammers could send blocks through the really thin ground that they had made. And as a result, they prevented any sort of downwards force from being applied on a block via certain methods, such as the hammer, the spud gun, and a few other things, I believe. Well, it's kind of annoying. And what that means is cannons can't fire down, or at least our old cannons couldn't. Our newer cannons, like the DFST or the DFAM, are capable of doing it through some trickery and wizardry with pistons. And, well, we can fire down now, but it requires a much more complex design and system, which is annoying. Now, we don't need spuds to fire down now, because we have methods to work around the dev's quick fix or the dev's break, I guess you could say. But I think it would still be a benefit to the game to do that, to help newer players who may not know about the break or the DF cannons that we use now, to figure it out and make cannons for themselves in creative and survival, just to benefit overall. And part of this is just me saying that we can do it, even though it may be a bit of a problem sending things to the ground. We're going to do it anyway. Could you please make it easier for us to do it in a better, a better, less glitchy magic, black magic method? So then, that is the end of my quick list, and I know this isn't covering anything. If I sat here for hours, I could probably think of quite a bit more to add to this, and I bet you could too. So, like I said at the beginning of this video, I do suggest, or I do want to hear from you guys on what you would add to the game. Both fixes and just general improvements, or even, hey, really crazy ideas that you'd love to see in the future. So, unfortunately, I am all out of time for recording this episode. If you guys did enjoy, please leave a like. Any suggestions, leave in the comments down below. Already said that one for the third time now. I do also thank Captain Bob and Black Kitten for being members over on the channel and supporting me in that way. I'm going to go ahead and end it here. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for sticking around. And until next time, peace.